Okay, I think we're ready to get started. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have all of our members of the committee are here present today. Also present from the town are Raylene Menominee, our town clerk, and Terry Tiemann, our assistant town manager, and Will Wharton, our IT director. I'd like to get approval of, does somebody make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion to approve the minutes of our September 25th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Yes, motion. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Well, we have the pleasure today of having Christophe Toulouse joining us as our featured speaker. He's the executive director of the Center for the Inland Bays. Prior to joining the center, Christophe served as a senior counsel for the U.S. Senate Environmental and Public Works Committee. He previously served as a senior advisor on the Chesapeake Bay for EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy. He provided diversity of executive and legislative experience at all levels of government, having served 10 years in various capacities in the U.S. House of Representatives as cabinet secretary under then Governor Tom Carper and as director of the District Department of the Environment in Washington, D.C. He will be discussing the bays and what you think about development and how the bays are doing. And can you go up to the podium over there?
Oh, of course.
Would you mind doing that?
And there's a big sign here. It says, "Speak into the microphone." So I'll give it a shot. And I'm going to be talking as much to the committee as to the audience here. And Ron was very gracious to offer this opportunity to meet with you all today, and I'm so very happy to be here. He didn't give me a time limit, so I figure 3 hours might be about right. Yeah, or maybe a little less. But at any rate, yeah, as we were talking about the agenda for the meeting and the discussion items, one of the things that Ron mentioned was maybe talking a little bit about land use in Sussex County. And, you know, it's an issue that we're all living with. It's an issue that, like the weather, is something that we would have occasion to complain about. And it is a critically important issue to us at the Center for the Inland Bays for many of the same reasons that it's a critical issue for everybody sitting around the room here today. So I think what I'll do is just a very little bit of background discussion to sort of set the stage. What I'd like to do, with your all's indulgence, is to then open it up. I think that there are questions that people have, there are issues that people would like to express. Mostly what I'm hoping we can do is begin what would be the Bethany version of a series of community discussions around our watershed about land use, about the hazards that we face, and how best to coalesce around a discussion of what those issues are and the solutions that make the most sense for each of our communities. This is critically important. There are many folks in our community who have different ways of sort of looking at what we're looking at, but our climate is changing. I mean, there's really no question about it. You know, folks have over recent years decided it's a great political issue, but it doesn't change the facts. That our atmosphere is warming, our oceans are expanding, our ice is melting, our seas are rising. And as a result, and many of you have this every day or every week, every month, at some point during the year, you've got water in places that you didn't move here to enjoy water. I mean, you didn't come here because you hated it, obviously, but you know, when it's crawling up your street, into your yard, into your crawl space, it's all of a sudden a different matter. And so that is very directly related to the kinds of land use decision-making that's going on, the kinds of land use decisions that have happened in the past, and it's a matter of us to pick up on those lessons and to apply them in a very meaningful and smart way going forward, because I think in many ways we have not been terribly smart in terms of how we've developed our land and around our water here in our watershed. So let me talk a little bit about why it is that this is so important. For many of you, sitting in traffic going up and down Route 1 during the summertime is not a treat. It's increasingly not a treat if there's construction on Route 1, even this time of year. So that's one of the many challenges, is congestion on many of our roads and streets. Route 1, a perfect example, but 24, 26, increasingly Route 9 and Route 16, our east-west corridors are proving to be an incredible challenge. And of course, guess what? That's where all the development is taking place. And so there is that issue. There's the issue of having a lot more development and a lot more people moving here and a lot more children residing in our communities than our schools have capacity to deal with at this point. We have a population for whom the search for medical service is a day-to-day challenge for many of us, and a month-by-month opportunity to figure out when our next appointment could be scheduled when we've got something that's, to us at least, is pretty critical. And there are a host of other concerns and challenges that we have. But one of the basic problems that we face, and whether you're looking at it from an environmental lens, as we would tend to do, or from any of these other social impact perspectives, is we have development that is outpacing our capacity to keep up with it through the infrastructure investments that we make, whether it's the roads, the schools, the EMS services, fire, whatever. And so as a county, and I'm speaking more on a county basis than I am on a Bethany basis, because these are issues that have arisen and are a topic of great deal of discussion in county council now, especially now that they realize that making the wrong kinds of decisions actually has political cost. The last council elections, 3 incumbent members lost their seats, and the reason is that people were getting pretty fed up. And the reasons they're fed up is different depending on who you are, where you're situated. If you're in a car at all, there's certainly one reason. If you have a new development going in next door, which you didn't expect, and they take down all the trees, so there's absolutely no protection, no separation between you and that next development, that's a concern. And again, if you have kids in school, you have emergency medical needs of whatever sort, concerned about what might happen if your house were to catch on fire, all of these things are things that just add to the pot, and there was a tipping point that obviously was reached. And when the new incumbent council members came on board, one of them, one of the Republican newly elected members of council, suggested that perhaps the thing to do as Sussex County was to call a moratorium on new development in certain areas in Sussex County. Well, you can imagine, heads were exploding, hair was on fire, a whole lot of constituencies that weren't real fans of that idea immediately said that's really not a good idea. So council's answer to that was to create the Land Use Reform Working Group. It was a group of 10 people, some of them from the development community, some from the environment, natural resource conservation community, including the Center for the Inland Bays, some members of the housing community. People are concerned about affordability in housing, which I didn't mention before, but a huge issue around here. And a couple of state agencies, Department of Transportation, DelDOT, more affectionately known as, and the Delaware State Housing Authority was also representative, and the State Planning Office. So it was a good group, as much diversity as you can squeeze into a group of 10 people. And we met from March to September. And it was interesting. It was a lot of discussion. It was a lot of work. But in the end, this group of people came up with 20 recommendations to County Council as to what to do about growth and development in Sussex County. All things considered, and of course I'm a little bit biased, but I think that that's a good set of 20 recommendations. Light years beyond where county council's thinking has been, a lot to chew on. Some things are very difficult to contemplate, very difficult to do in terms of just the practical workload involved. But that was part of the message. It's time to work now. It's time to think hard. It's time to invest more. And so what I would suggest, rather than me going through that litany of 20, which I won't do, is to invite you to go to the county council website. And I believe it's sussexcountyde.gov. And they've got a wonderful final report coming out of that process, which does include those 20 recommendations and a little bit of background about how it is that this group was brought together, the nature of the process, and the timeline that we followed. So I would commend that to everybody. It's a little tangential to folks who are living within the municipality of Bethany Beach, because this is all county stuff, but you don't have to go too far, and you're in county territory, and you're dealing with the consequences of the wise and not so wise decisions that are coming out of planning and zoning and the county council as it relates to the development around us. All of our quality of life, no matter where we live in this county, is affected, of course, by those decisions. So again, I would suggest taking a good look at that and maybe thinking about ways of encouraging county council members to take those recommendations seriously and to get on the ball. One of the things that can happen, and many of you have worked on committees once or another, produced a report, watch it collect dust on somebody's bookshelf. These are not those kinds of recommendations. We as citizens of the county can afford to have that happen. So to the extent that you're inspired by all or any of the components of that plan, should really get your voices heard. They were motivated to create it because of the political pressure. They should be motivated to get these things done because that political pressure isn't going away. And it's going to take a while on the ground to see the benefit of wiser land use decision making. And so just helping them to remember that that's a reality that is going to be a part of the next 3, 4, 5 election cycles. It's not a bad idea. And this is true for all elected officials. They need to be reminded that they're not there by right. They're there because we all have needs and we have services. And it's true of county council, city council here. It's true of all our municipalities and all of our counties across the state. So that's the lead in terms of why this is important, what people are doing about it. What I thought I might do at this point is just open it up for a discussion with members of the committee. To the extent that you guys want to entertain any of that discussion with the audience, that's fine too. But I think the back and forth is going to give us the opportunity to explore some of these issues and perhaps even focus on some of the more concerning things for folks who are residents here or spend a good bit of time or work here in Bethany Beach.
I think I heard you speak before that these 20 recommendations, it was not a menu, pick A and B and C, you need to do all 20. Is that happening?
Yeah, as you can imagine, in a discussion that involves developers and conservation-minded people and folks who are interested in affordable housing and all the rest of those issues, there were trade-offs. And so in other words, okay, you know, if we are to include this component, then maybe we will consider something that is, let's say, greater flexibility or lessening time frames for developers, for example, those sorts of things. So a number of trade-offs, but also these things are so interconnected. You think, what does affordable housing have to do with protecting forest lands or undeveloped properties in Sussex County? Well, as it turns out, a whole lot. And if you think about it a little bit further, where would affordable housing be built? Will it be built in those places where the land values are less, and therefore you could build housing, and therefore it would cost less for folks and tenants to use? But where we actually need it is where the work is. And so Dr. Tam at the BB has said this many, many times. You know, my people can't live anywhere close to where they work. We need to figure that out. And so near and around our municipalities, along our major corridors, within a certain distance of sewer and water services, near our major arteries, if I didn't mention that already, you know, these kinds of things and these places where it makes sense, if you think about it, to develop. And then in those places that are far out, let's let those be working landscapes. Let's let those continue to be farmlands. Let's conserve those areas that have the forests and the wetlands and all these other really critical features for our inland bays and for our county to persist. Because before long, if we keep going the way we are, we'll see those things, but it'll be in basically the equivalent of zoos. You want to go see a tree, you want to see a forest, well, come to this zoo, come to this park. And that'll be about the only place that you can see those things. And, you know, that's a dystopian view of things, but it's, you know, without checks and without some control over this process, that's where we'll end up. And for the bays, for example, any square inch of pavement or roofing or sidewalk that is no longer a bare patch of ground is a problem for us. We need as much spongy space as we can get to soak up the water that falls on our land, to take those pollutants and take them down into the water column where they can be broken down before they ultimately slide into a stream or a river or our bays directly. That's a really important natural function. There's also a flood control functionality. People don't think about that. But trees, wetlands, open ground are the best protection we have against flooding associated with precipitation events that anybody has devised to date, and Mother Nature did it for us a long, long time ago. Pave it over, then we've got real problems. And what happens is then those flooding waters go into our waterways, they take a lot of pollution with them and sediments, and it creates all the problems that we're trying to rectify in our work at the Center for the Inland Bays. Did I answer your question?
Well, I just wondered, is the county council looking at all 20, or have they picked 2 things they're going to work on?
Well, we continue to encourage, and we hope that folks will likewise do that. In other words, the package is really important. This was not presented as a menu of options, pick your favorites,
Right.
because all of us in this room will have favorites on that list. But that's not how it should work. It should work in an integrated way so that as we're taking care of our environmental features, we're protecting our conservation areas, we're developing where it makes sense to develop, that we're also thinking about affordability for housing and all these other issues that I've talked about. So our hope is that. Now the things are going to roll out on a different time frame because some of these are ordinance changes, which are relatively straightforward and can be done fairly quickly. Some of them are by necessity going to be parts of the comprehensive plan for the county, which they weren't planning on starting to work on until I think next year. They've upped that time frame. It's due in 2028, but they want to, because of the things that we've recommended and the work that's involved in that, get an early start so they can begin to incorporate some of those elements into, you know, talking about comprehensive rezoning for the county is not something that they're going to be able to do right away, but it is a very important thing for them to do.
Do we have any other questions? Or thoughts or whatever? You know, Bethany is probably a little different in that we don't have developments. I mean, our development is primarily tearing down older homes and small little cottages and building larger ones. But, you know, we fight the same fight. We've been able to isolate and maintain 2 large areas of wetlands that absorb, you know, a good bit of the town's drainage runs through those wetlands in the nature center and in the Walcheck property. And those are owned by the town and maintained. So that's a good thing. The town also promotes, and we've got our homeowners help fight flooding in Bethany, which is, you know, on their properties. We have a pamphlet we've had out, and we've had presentations on it. It's been going on for well over 2 years now, where we have a list of things for every homeowner that, what you can do on your property to do exactly what you were talking about. Get your property so it can absorb as much as it can possibly absorb. And there's many things you can do, not stone driveways, lots of vegetation, trees. We don't have a tree ordinance, which we do need to get a tree ordinance. We've had a lot of talk about it. We haven't got there yet. But we do have a percentage ordinance that requires a certain percentage on every property to have pervious surfaces. And that's, it's hard to, there are lots of places that are grandfathered from what they've already had previously had, but going forward, and that's been in effect now for, I don't know, 5+ years, I'm sure. But there are lots of steps that people can do. Out in the developments that are built out in the to the west, the HOAs, it's like cookie cutter houses, and they all have to have their lawns, and everything's maintained, and it's a little different in Bethany.
So, and I appreciate that a lot. I think one other issue that I can talk about a little bit, and certainly something that's worthy of discussion, certainly in this municipality and elsewhere in Sussex County, is the encroaching of water, sea level rises, and all the rest of that. We've got really some significant community level discussions to have of what the implications are as sea levels rise. The biggest threat for communities like Bethany, South Bethany, getting down towards Fenwick, up to Dewey, is probably not as much the ocean as it is the bays.
Yes.
The bays are going to get you, and you're already realizing that and engaged in those discussions. But one other thing that I find that people are not focusing on as much as is warranted is the impact of all this ultimately on property value. One of the things that some of you may have noticed already is that your favorite insurance carrier is no longer providing insurance for you. Now that's not for flood protection. I'm talking more of the homeowner's property casualty type insurance for structures. But what will happen, and especially if we're not wise about it, is what has happened in the state of Florida, what is happening increasingly along coastal Texas, what is happening in California, actually for some different climate-related stresses, but is insurance companies finding that the level of hazard that they're asked to insure is here, and therefore, logically, the level of cost to policyholders would be something akin to that so that they could cover those losses over time. But what you have is an intermediary political step, which is called the state insurance commissioner in each state. So the company will go and say, I need this amount of income from my premium holders in order to adequately insure the risk that I see in your state or in your area of the state. And the commissioner is going to look at that and say, my people don't want to pay that. And so the insurance commissioner will say, you can have this. And so this is a decision point for each of those insurers. Maybe they can make up for it with let's say, automobile insurance or some other lines of insurance that they as a larger company may provide. But ultimately, they may decide, as some have already in Delaware, we can't manage that gap. And that gap exists in every single state in which those companies operate. And so they've got a lot of calculating to do. The logical assumption is that they are going to decide in places of greatest risk not to be there anymore. And that then is a problem in terms of your ability, in many, many cases, to get mortgages, to transfer your property, to have that difficult discussion with somebody who is interested in buying your property about whether it's insurable. Well, why isn't it insurable? What's going on here? And you can see then what ultimately can happen And this is a big national discussion, but what is happening is an increasing realization that the trillions of dollars of value that we have in coastal development along the Atlantic and Gulf Coast of the United States are extraordinarily vulnerable. And so what we have is an analogy to the various bubbles that we've experienced, whether it's housing or other bubbles in the past, where there may be a fairly sudden realization of that risk and a fairly sudden decision by key insurers, for example, to bail out, and a decision by investors not to invest in those areas anymore, and a concomitant reduction in the value of our property. I put it out there because it's something people need to think about. Sure. It's something that communities can plan for and think about. But one of the things, as you were mentioning, Ron, things that people can do with their properties, and it's not just whether you have trees or you have native planting that is more absorbing of water and stormwater and pollutants and helping with pollinators and all those good things, is also thinking about what you might want to do with your property is going to reduce that level of risk. And maybe on a broader scale, we can have a discussion with the insurance industry about a strategy for creating those incentives, taking those steps to protect our properties, and seeing reductions in our insurance rates as a result of having made those investments. Less cost to the insurance company, more benefit to the people who are making those investments, working as communities to figure out ways that we can then maybe leverage that kind of an incentive into other things that would encourage that kind of behavior. Because in the end, if there is an event that is causing a great deal of disruption, or if not destruction to our properties, there are costs that are incurred then on the municipalities, on the county, certainly the state. And it used to be on the federal government, but I'm not sure they're going to be there for us going forward in a substantial way. So these are things that we need to be thinking about, is how do we build our resilience to the things that are really not hypothetical anymore. This is really happening. We see it happening, and we're very fortunate here in Delaware in this regard. Climate change is not a mystery to us. It's happening, we see what it does, and we can project as to what it's going to mean. And it's not going to go away. It's not going to stop. We can take all the carbon out of our emissions, creating this warmth in the atmosphere tomorrow. And we'll be living with the consequences of those past investments in carbon in our atmosphere, unfortunately, for hundreds of years into the future. So we need to take these steps regardless of what our national, state, or local policy is with regards to the carbon emissions that are feeding the monster. Finding creative ways to mix some public investment with what we can induce in terms of benefits on the insurance side would be something that would be a real bottom line benefit to all of us. I put it out there for discussion purposes. We as a center are beginning to embrace resilience building as a strategy going forward, because a lot of the things that we do to build resilience, things like living shorelines, which you're familiar with through the committee's work, also marsh restorations, some of those things that are more traditionally in our bailiwick are also great water quality investments. They also create and protect habitat for all the critters and the fish that we care about, and the plants. So what I'm looking for the benefit of the center is, what are the 5 benefits we can get from that next dollar's investment instead of the 1 benefit that we used to expect and count on. And this is the kind of world that we're living in for efficiency purposes, but also because there are so many things on the plate that we have to be thinking about, we need to be working together to accomplish. And this is why this center is being as public as we can possibly be, and will be more and more as we get a little bit more facility with this, but being part of that discussion, and as a matter of fact, as much as we can, creating that opportunity to have those discussions, and hosting the kinds of forums through our Southern Delaware Coastal Resilience Initiative that would bring the expertise to the table, help us to answer these seemingly imponderable questions like, what in the world do I do with my property? Or for a community, what in the world do I do about the infrastructure? Because that's the other side of the coin. We can protect our houses, we can be 15 feet in the air for that matter, but what if we have a water treatment plant that's like underwater? What do we do if our water supply is no longer dependable? And of course, electricity and all those other functionalities we kind of take for granted. But you got a very livable house, but for the fact that you have no lights, you can't flush your toilet, and you can't drink the water. So yeah, these are. I'm fomenting agitation here. And so anyway, but these are things really, as communities and as people, we need to be talking with our neighbors about and with each other and planning for. And so what we'd like to do is, aside from helping with the dead-end canals and the water quality associated with those, is engaging more in a broader discussion about what we can do to build our resilience and try to keep Mother Nature at bay as best as possible.
Yeah. What's interesting, I mean, even in the town, infrastructure, our water, this town gets its water from 4 different wells. 3 of them are in the park, one of them's at our water plant over on Collins. If you can't see some of the wells because they're inside buildings. 2 of them are inside that well building that you see over in the park. One of them is outside, and if you notice, it's got brick built around it all the way up to about either 3 or 4 feet. And there's a purpose for that. Whether if we were to get flooding or whatever, it can't be overtopped and water seep in. So, efforts are taken that way. And the ones that are inside are protected in the same manner. Very similar.
Yeah. Well, the other challenge we have, and that's no end to challenges, okay, but this is why we need to talk, right? We can take care of that problem for you. You don't have to worry about it coming from the top. We'll just get it from underneath. And we have this thing called saltwater intrusion, which is also a challenge as sea levels rise, is that salt water starts creeping into our aquifers and all the rest of it. Fortunately, most of the drinking water is not at a really shallow aquifer. You go a little bit further down, which might be somewhat insulated from those impacts. But if you have a hole through rock or anything, eventually salt water might find its way in. So a major consideration, I think, in the first instance with our folks in the agriculture industry who are tapping some shallower aquifers for the irrigation purposes. Having to expend more money in order to get a better source of water for irrigation. But at any rate, it's something, too, that we're looking at, and a number of other folks around Delaware and the nation are looking at that as well.
Thank you, Chris, for being here. Really appreciate it. And this follows up on Bruce's question a little bit. And I haven't looked at the 20 recommendations yet, so thank you for correcting us. But is there any kind of scorecard, either at the county level, state level, to sort of see, are we making progress on that? That it's in front of folks, that they're not just, oh, here's the report, fine, let's go about day-to-day stuff. Because this is all long-term investments, commitments that we need to make. And as citizens, are we holding our representatives accountable on the progress they're making or not making? And from a business perspective, maybe a scorecard's the wrong way, but it's a very simple way of showing, are we making progress? And I don't know, is there something like that exists now, or should we be thinking about that, or it's easier for folks to be able to grasp?
Yeah, some sort of a dashboard that shows progress. And I think a simple one would be, how are you doing relative to these recommendations? I think it's a terrific idea.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be the county that does it. It could be a watch group like the Sussex Preservation Coalition or someone like that, who would say, okay, how are we doing as a county council in terms of addressing these recommendations? I will say that in terms of planning, there is also the State Planning Coordination Office. I can't remember if I got that quite right, but and they create something which they're just finalizing now, and you may have heard about it in the media, is the strategies, the state strategies. And what that is a report that they do, I think, is it an annual basis? Heaven only knows. It's a tremendous amount of work. Maybe it's a multi-year thing. But what they do is they look at the county comprehensive plans and the municipal plans, and there's 60 of those with all those jurisdictions around the state, incorporate the knowledge that they can garner from that in terms of where growth should be happening, where growth isn't happening, and ultimately all these other factors in terms of what's vulnerable in our communities, what's going on with schools and fire and all the rest of it, and saying, with the help of the cabinet secretaries of the various key agencies, is where should we be making our investments as we look 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So DelDOT is a key player in that. DENREC is an important player in that. The Department of Agriculture is an important player in that. Of course, the Housing Authority is an important player there too. But to identify from a state perspective, where would we, given all this information that we've gathered, be investing our next dollars? And that is supposed to inform then everyone else to say, okay, if you want to put a development out in the middle of a green field in Nowheresville, Sussex County, we have no plans to put roads out there. We have no plans to put water and sewer service out there. We have no plans to, invest in additional schools or emergency service accessibility, all that stuff in those areas. It should be a no-go. The problem in Sussex County over the past years is about 25% of the new development in Sussex County has taken place in these places that the county has identified as no-growth areas. And we're talking places like Cool Springs. That'll be the fourth largest municipality in Sussex County immediately once it's completed. That's thousands and thousands and thousands of homes, and some multiple of that in terms of numbers of people, and heaven only knows what it means for the roads in terms of traffic and all the rest of it. So this is one of the key recommendations coming out of the working group. Don't get out ahead of your infrastructure. The problem is, and I think the county council in its historic perspective said, look, if we put it out there, then we're going to have all these new constituents and they're going to be writing their representatives in the state government and saying, get me a road, get me water, get me all these services. And guess what? Political people, being political people, will respond to that. And so there's the additional burden. Each of us, I presume, is a state taxpayer. This is costing us money as state taxpayers to support the kind of land use decision-making that county council, with the aid of the Planning and Zoning Commission, have thought are good ideas. But it's really not working in a coordinated fashion with the key state agencies as expressed through these strategies that should be happening, and that's our number one recommendation in those 20 that you'll take a look at. This is critically important. It's not just us acting alone, any more than the town of Bethany doing the thing, whatever it is. Ultimately, it's going to have implications that go beyond the borders. If it's a significant investment, whatever it is. County does the same thing. It's going to have an impact on all of us, whether we're citizens here or Rehoboth or any of the other communities. So we need to be respectful of that. We need to be knowledgeable about that. And we need to understand, for all sorts of reasons, that there really are places that make sense to develop. And that is, for example, where the infrastructure is or is planned to be. And not in the places that ought to be forests, wetlands, farm fields. And the farming community is concerned. Do they want to be able to sell their property if that is necessary at some point? Yes. But in many cases, would they rather continue to farm for as long as their family can keep that up in successive generations? Absolutely. But they need to have a certain density of agricultural production to have the support services to support them to do that agriculture. If that infrastructure falls apart on the ag production side, then, It's a terrible thing for that community of folks. So that's why we have to be thinking a little bit bigger than our bubbles.
And Christoph, I also wanted to mention the State of the Bays is going to be, is later this year that we're doing that?
Yes, we're in 2026 now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? And just so you know that Christoph is my boss at work, so I just wanted, yeah,
Bob says
wanted to
that
be
in public.
respectful.
I actually work for Bob. But yes, he mentions the State of the Bays report, which we do every 5 years. And it is our take at what is going on in our watershed. And we look, of course, at the various plants and the various animals and try to give a status of how these things are doing. For example, our osprey, our fish, our blue crabs, our horseshoe crabs, you know, those kinds of things. But we also look at land use changes. And as of the last report back in 2021, which came out in 2023, COVID, you know, all that stuff, looking at climate and its impacts on our watershed. We have about a foot more water to deal with than we did back at basically the beginning of 1900s. And that rate of sea level rise is accelerating quite quickly. You add to that the unfortunate reality that Delaware is also sinking at the same time. So water levels rising, land falling, you know what that means, right? So we have that extra challenge.
From what I'm learning here today, and I appreciate your thoughts and the information, I don't necessarily connect things until I learn something new, but I know that there's a great impact by land use out there and what they do to the level of the water around Bethany Beach. And so I know that's one important part. Another important part, and I don't think the county ever recognizes it, but the reason that a lot of people are moving there is because there's water there and a beach that we have and we support with our tax dollars. The county doesn't seem to ever want to support us with the tax dollars that we pay them to maintain our infrastructure and our beach. And I'm talking specifically about replenishment, because there's no federal funds available for the next year or more, and our beach is not what it should be. I think if we stopped all the traffic from coming in, we probably have enough beach for the residents of Bethany Beach. But that's not going to sit well with everybody who lives over that bridge across the Asswoman Canal. So I understand from your presentation that it would be appropriate for a more direct approach from the residents of Bethany Beach to the council, and not just writing them a letter, but being there and keeping their feet to the fire. And so I know we've got 3 or 4 council members here, and instead of one person from Bethany Beach going, that a representative might be appropriate to be at all those meetings and make sure that the county knows what our shortfalls are, both monetarily and everything else, infrastructure, so that they can help us. I mean, we've been trying to make improvements, and they've done a great job. The town's done a great job doing that and accessing federal funds. But with the lack of that, the town of Bethany cannot support it by itself.
Well, you're raising a really good point, and it's less of a land use question, although, of course, you know, if you can't develop any land to the west of us that people can live on in order to get to the beach here, that might have some impact. But beach replenishment is going to be an increasing challenge in terms of funding. I know it occasionally, you know, on a fairly regular basis, about every 5 years, I guess, DENREC does some sort of an assessment of local capacity to support the expense, because really the state takes on a lot of that with federal help, and the Corps of Engineers is obviously a big investor in those projects. But I don't know about the Corps. I don't know about, frankly, any of our federal agencies at this point in terms of what things look like going ahead. I do know, for example, Dewey had a $1 million stormwater project that the Corps was lined up to take care of for them, and they pulled the funding on that at pretty much the last minute. And I think, yes, I think the communities are getting worried that, okay, you know, maybe you need to be aware that the resources for these recurring replenishments of the beaches up and down our Atlantic coastline may not be as dependable as they were before. So clearly, there's state interests involved in this, county interests. And I think what the county has done and been able to do, because the federal government has been there in a substantial way and the state has been the match for those investments, is not have to worry about it so much. But this is clearly a critical Sussex County question as well. And this is where, again, talking across boundaries and jurisdictions and all the rest of it is becoming increasingly critical as we try to determine what best to do about the challenges that we're all facing as a result of, among many things, but certainly changing climate and the development patterns that we've been living with.
Thank you for talking to us, sir. DENREC's focus recently seems to have shifted slightly from conservancy to public land use, like the new requirement for shoreline access that I'm sure the town is dealing with. Were any of those 20 recommendations focused towards DENREC? And if not, what part of the equation did they play?
Yeah, the recommendations were a lot less about things like public access and all the rest of it. And I will say that whatever requirements are coming out of DENREC as it relates to public access are probably a direct result of using federal money in order to put sand on the beach.
Absolutely.
And there are requirements from DENREC at the state level and also the federal level that if those funds are used, then it needs to be publicly accessible. So I don't want to get in the middle of all that. I know how emotional that can be for some folks. And I think it's a matter of fact on the agenda here somewhere.
Yeah, it is something we're discussing.
So yeah, I'll let experts on that deal with that issue. But our recommendations certainly as a whole have tangential impact on a lot of different state agencies. Obviously more so with DelDOT in terms of roads, which is a big focus. We didn't focus as much on water infrastructure and those sorts of things, which DENREC invests in through what they call the State Revolving Loan Fund. But yeah, I mean, in terms of protecting open space, conservation areas, protecting wetlands, protecting trees, which are a big part of those recommendations, it is going to have an impact and dovetail with some of the things that DENREC would be interested in. So yeah, it's not direct like, okay, DENREC, do this.
Yeah. And there have been some very recent developments that I was going to cover a little bit later, where, relative to federal funds being available, there is very recently, this week, in fact, there is an article, I believe, in the current Coastal Point that notes that our U.S. congressional delegation, Chris Coons and Sarah McBride and Lisa Blunt Rochester have succeeded in getting into an appropriations, getting it through actually both houses of Congress, and it's now headed for the president, who knows what's going to happen there. But it does have, I think, $12 million in it for replenishment of the Delaware beaches. So, so progress is being made. Another thing we had just this week on Tuesday, we had Lisa Blunt Rochester in town at her request to review the beaches. She was doing it for the upcoming WARDA, which is the Water Resources Development Act, which is enacted or updated every year. So they're working on 2026 currently. But it's good to see that federal is right out there, and we had an excellent meeting with them, and she certainly understands the conditions of things. And on the county level, it's interesting that, you know, the chairman of the county board of council is Doug Hudson, who doesn't live in Bethany right at the moment, but he grew up in Bethany, right back here when we had a pig farm, right back off of 26. So he's heavily ingrained in the coastal towns and very interested in it. I've talked to him about it. I think if once the rubber meets the road at times, the county probably will come up with some monies. He indicated to me they had money set aside for beaches. So we'll see. We'll see.
See, that's all really, really good intelligence. That's why it's great to have such a great chairman of the committee here. One thing I will say is the situation at federal level is always highly uncertain. But what you have had historically are members of the delegation who are very, very familiar with and aware of the value of our beach and beach restoration projects. And I worked on the committee that produces the Water Resources Development Act. And it was a major focus for us. I think it's a bi-yearly thing, if I'm remembering correctly, but it's a ton of work. But it's one of the most politically popular things that comes out of Congress because it's a Christmas tree, right? So we get money for beach replenishment. Texas gets money for Galveston's port improvements. You know, it's you know, roads, bridges, airports, and anything else that the Corps might be involved with. So actually, maybe a little less of those other things, but a lot of, obviously, it's the authorization for the Corps work. And the thing is Water Resources Development Act would be the authorization for projects. So Congress would agree to do this or that or the other thing, whether it's studies or projects. But then Congress has to come back through the appropriations process and actually appropriate the money that has previously been authorized through that act. And sometimes it can take years, but
Yeah.
$12 million is a good investment.
Who knows? It sounds good, and, you know, it's better than nothing, so.
Oh, for sure.
We'll see.
Absolutely.
We'll see. Okay, any other questions?
I might be pointing this question the wrong way asking you, but it's kind of subjective to it. Do you have any update on the Loop Canal Dam project?
I think you
We're
got that
gonna
on
talk
your
about
agenda,
that.
so-
It's on the agenda?
Yeah. Yeah, now, that was another thing that we when we had Lisa McBride here, I'm sorry, Lisa Martin Rochester here on Tuesday, we took her around town in the trolley, took her down to the beach. We actually walked on the beach, saw the damage where it exists right there now. And then we took her over by the Loop Canal, the end of the Loop Canal, and went through the history of it and what we've been working on. And so she's fully briefed in that, and I think, you know, she's gotten us money in the past, so we'll see where we go on that. But I do have some other things to cover on that a little later. So, thank you, Christoph.
Thank you. Thank you
That
all
was
very
very,
much.
very enlightening. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to Bob.
I'm getting shorter.
It'll lift up.
There's an order for you chairs, just so you know.
Will this work from here? Will?
There we go.
Little humor, welcome back.
We ready? Okay. Well, Christoph obviously gave the high level from the Center for the Inland Bays.
Let me give you a little,
Okay.
I mean, this is, Bob has been, I think you ramrodded it. You were the main character with the Inland Bays as far as running this project. And it is a living shoreline. Protects Thompson Island, which is, if you're going up toward Dewey and you look off to the left and you see the only area over there that's undeveloped, that's Thompson Island. So, and a new living shoreline was constructed there in the fall, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so we're going to get a little update on it and
Yeah.
how it went.
Okay, and I did steal the presentation, or borrowed it from Megan. And those of you that are going up to the Wetlands Conference next week, this will be there, so a little bit of a sneak preview on it,
Oh.
so.
Okay.
You know, briefly, I'm going to go click past some things quickly about what the inland bays are, and but Thompson Island Nature Preserve is owned by Delaware Seashore State Park. It's a state park, 68-acre preserve, and is by virtue of being a nature preserve, that's the highest level of protection that you would have in Delaware. Again, owned by DNREC. It has huge ecological and cultural significance within the state. In fact, it's often been referred to as one of the most important cultural resources in the state of Delaware.
Well, it relates back to the indigenous population here. That was a very sacred place, am I correct?
It was, yes. And, you know, there are a number of different tribes that kind of, I'm not an expert on Native American affairs or the history of them, but it is my understanding that there's a number of different tribes that have come to that area and left, going back as far as 10,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago. So it's been it's an important cultural resource for that reason.
But you can't go on the island, is that correct?
Cannot go on the island right now, no.
Yeah, but there is a nice trail, and I've been on that trail that right behind Dewey,
Yes,
that you can walk out and view it across the wetlands.
correct. So the team, Center for the Inland Bays, with Division of Parks and Rec, our consultant is Sovereign Consulting, and the Nanacoke Tribe has been involved in the planning on this. We took them out to take a look at the island and bless the project. And then we had a contractor, which is Sumco Contracting, and the Living Shoreline Solutions put the project together, produced what I'm going to be referring to as a WAD, and that stands for a wave attenuation device, and you'll see that in a minute. So, funders, a lot of grant funding that we got on this. Some federal, some state, some private. And this is really what we're looking at here is this is what's known as an artificial reef or an array, and those are individual units, and that's what a wave attenuation device is. It's a brand name, and they're engineered so that you place them in the water and you put them on, in a particular way, and what it does is it breaks the energy from the wind and wave energy, and that'll keep the waves from beating up the shoreline and causing the erosion. This picture, really, 1,000 words here. You can see on the left side where wave wasn't a particularly windy day, but there's little waves, and then on the other side where the energy is dissipated, the water's calm. That allows sediment that's in the water to drop out of the water column. Ideally, it's going to help rebuild Thompson Island. And there it is, right there, the better picture of the WADs. and also a picture of the aid to navigation that's required by the permit. Some more pictures of it. And you can see it's right behind Dewey Beach. Again, right behind, you can see the bank that's eroding, severe erosion over there. This area of Thompson Island has about 5 miles of fetch leading up to it. Fetch is the amount of distance that wind travels over water. And the more fetch you have, the more high energy the water column is, the more damage it's going to do to your shoreline. So these wads are designed so that they absorb the wave, they let some of the energy through, but it does slow it down. So again, the starting point, I mean, we were getting, as much as 1.5 feet of erosion per year, and that has nitrogen, phosphorus, total suspended sediments implications to the bay. So once you get this erosion, those pollutants get in the water column and cause problems. And again, the heritage resources that were at risk are in that area there. This is an aerial photo from '54, and the lines that are on that island there, this is high ground. I mean, for Delaware or for Sussex County, it's at least 20 feet above sea level. So so it's not a wet area there, and those lines that are within the main polygon in there, they're not mosquito ditches or something like that. Those are marks of agriculture. So, I mean, they were, and this is the prime area where the Native American archaeological area is there. So, at that point, the state of Delaware was not treating this like a very important cultural aspect. And that changed in 2000 with it becoming a nature preserve.
So, I mean, that looked like it was treeless.
It was cultivated. It was,
Okay.
yeah, it was
'Cause
farmed.
you see it now and it's
Treed,
grown up.
yeah.
You're right, it's trees. Okay.
This picture came from, we took representatives of the Nanacoke tribe out to the job site to look at the project site, to look at the area. A lot of them have been in Sussex County their entire lives and did not know that area existed. So we thought it was very important as part of the project to include the Nanacokes in this because one of the goals of the project is to preserve the cultural asset out there. This gets down more into the meat and potatoes of it. Thompson Island, the main thing is that we put a shoreline management plan together. There's really 4 shorelines out there. We left one out on the north side because that's not terribly erosive at this point. The western side is the Lewis and Rehoboth Canal. The southern side, where the most energy is and that's where we did phase 1 of the project. And then on the eastern side, that faces Dewey Beach, and that's probably going to be our next phase of this project. So various tactics that we use. Again, down phase 1 on the bottom, those are the wads that we used. Over on the canal, we'll probably use more of what would be considered a more traditional living shoreline for a low energy situation, although it does get boat traffic, excuse me, and a lot of boat traffic and currents in through there. And then on the east side, it does have a good amount of fetch coming over toward Dewey Beach with your east winds and that type of thing. So this is the project that we did, starting on the left. Those are the wads that are being manufactured. And what happens is we contracted with the designer of this tactic, and they provided us with these molds. The molds were sent to Greenwood, Delaware, to Gillespie. They're a concrete fabricator, and they made these things. There were 380 of them that were installed out there. We had to take delivery of them, and they sat at the James Farm for a little bit of time, and then we loaded them back on. They came down to New Road, which is off of Route 1, just south of Tower Road. And that was our staging area, and from there we put them into barges. Yep, there's the barge, and took them out to the area there. The permitting on it, it was very particular of where we could put them and what the footprint of the project had to be.
How much did each one of those weigh?
They're 2,500 pounds. Yeah, so
So you couldn't just do it yourself?
I did half of it.
I ask clients all the time, yes, like, okay, couldn't we save some cost?
Yeah, it's quite a project. And this is what we would consider a high energy situation. And we've encountered some settling within the project. The front row is as much as 6 inches in various places there. So we do everything, all of these projects that we do, we monitor. This is the post, this photo's taken during the immediate post-construction monitoring event. We'll be doing another one in February. February on the bays is always fun, I'll say that. And then another one in May. So
You don't ride your kayak out there in the middle of February, do you?
I'm not intending on doing that.
Okay.
If we don't get the boat back from the shop, I might be. But during construction, I actually did go out there quite a bit, and
And a kayak, you went out there.
yeah, it was just easier to get to. Well, I think,
Will?
Something happened here. This is not part of
I
the
think it was zero
presentation.
in the end, Thompson.
You see it.
This is the big pond. This is the inner still.
This is interesting, especially since we're doing that.
okay. So, yeah, and some of the initial things that we've seen out there, this is just to the west of where that array is. So this water here is not within the treatment area, and you can see where it's still, this is a relatively high tide, washing up with a windy day, south wind, washing up and taking the sediment. So you can see, firsthand what the problem is right there. But this is a photo from Google Earth, and it's already showed up on there. And you can see the area that's protected by the treatment, that there does appear to be sediment accumulation in that area. So initially, we feel really good about what we're going to be, about the results out there. Again, this is just one section of the southern shoreline. We have 2 more that we need to do out there, but it's a start.
So you're going to add more on the southern side?
Yes.
Okay.
There'll be two more arrays, and then it'll be a similar, but it'll be a smaller type of product that we're using in the water out there. Something that I can handle by myself.
Okay.
It'll likely be a heavily volunteer dependent project that we'll do out there. So
With the same concrete things?
different, much smaller.
Okay.
Much smaller. So stay tuned, we'll come
But what
back
they do
for
is
that one.
stack up so that you've got some mass and
Oh.
height.
I see.
So just a picture. In the first one in 2021, the former director of Delaware State Parks came to us about this project, and that's where this photo was taken, the one on the right. But on the left, it just shows you how the continued or increased erosion that we have out there. Okay, so yeah, this picture is not as good, but there, we do have, let's see if any more in here. It does give you an idea of the fetch that we have on the project and how it does slow that wave energy down before it beats the daylights out of the shoreline there. Another thing that we're hoping that the project does is it discourages people from going out, unauthorized people going out onto the island. There have been people that have gone out there making teepees, if you will. They are, if you were on a boat and saw those, you might think they had something to do with the native tribes. They do not. They are completely unauthorized. Parks will go out there on a occasional basis and try to take these things down. But that's one of the things we're hoping for, is that we do restrict, that we will make it harder for people to get out there. There's a picture of our one of the Nanacoke tribe members that on the boat trip that day, and that's just a mock-up of the WAD that we have for demonstration purposes. Again, speaking of funding and speaking of but those are our next steps. Again, on the right side there, that area there is going to be a smaller type structure that we're using there. It's called an oyster castle. On the south side, more of the WADs out there, and again on the west side, more of a what people would consider a traditional living shoreline.
Where do the majority of your funds come from?
We've gotten several larger grants on it through
From state or federal?
federal, but state definitely. We got from among other things, clean water. What we call CWIG grants, 319 grants.
Okay.
There was a state parks did through their I forget the name of that. No, it wasn't. Did we?
Oh, they have another fund. I can't remember.
Yeah, the State Parks Trust.
Okay.
Ray Bivens was able to get a $25,000 grant from Steel Equipment Corporation, and we did get some money from the Environmental Penalty Fund as well.
Okay. Thank you.
There's our
You
update.
want to pass that on over this way? Okay. I need that one for next. Am I ready to go?
Oh, I think so.
I don't know if many of you, I'm sure, know who that is in the center there. That's Lisa Brunt Rochester, our U.S. Senator. As I said before, the Senate recently paused or passed and forwarded to the President this appropriations bill, which is $40 million, but it covers a lot of other things, water treatment and housing and a number of things throughout the state. But the one thing that affects us is the $12 million, which was specifically designated for coastal replenishment. Hopefully that'll get passed, and we'll see how it progresses from there. But with the state of federal funding these days, it's hard to get a grasp on anything, but at least they're changing and they're moving along. This the pictures you're seeing here, this was Lisa Burnt Rochester here on Tuesday, where we took her down to, took her around town on the trolley, and her delegation was with her. There were several people from Denrec there. Chief of Staff from Denrec was there. So we had a good opportunity to talk to all of them. And obviously, we were talking about the dune damage, which you can see right behind me there, or right behind her. That's a gentleman from Denrec, and Edie Dondero, you probably recognize, is the mayor of South Bethany. So she was along with us as well, as their beaches are similarly affected. So we sat down upstairs and went through a few things, and we had a lot of pass-outs for her that demonstrated how this town is affected. We have a presentation that you may have seen before here, where we show what the storms of the 90s, the effects that they had before there was a dune, where we had the breakers breaking right over the bandstand and flowing right down Garfield Parkway, to the extent where they could pick up dumpsters from sitting over the by mangoes and move them right into the middle of the park of Garfield Parkway. Quite a flow of water. So, but then when the dune was installed in 2006, we have not had that. It has been breached. It was breached once in 2016, down on the south end of, just off the boardwalk. So that kind of demonstrates the need for the 3 to 5 year replenishment, which is what is supposed to happen through our 50-year agreement with the Corps of Engineers. Of course, that is not happening in that time frame right now, but if it does happen, we're probably fine. So there we go. We took her around in the trolley. Is that it? I guess that's the last one. So we can turn that off. So it was a very good visit on Tuesday. As I said, that was for their exploration relative to WARDA 2026. We'll see how that progresses. That is the bill from last year through the Carper administration, whereby they changed the federal funding from, was it 65-35 to 80-20, I believe it is now. That's 65% federal, 35% state or local, and now it is 80% federal, 20% state.
It might be 90-10, I think.
I thought that was the Bay Beaches. And we were 80-20.
You could be right. I thought we talked about it Monday. And
Okay, maybe. I'm sorry.
You could,
But anyway,
It's
it
not
improved
happening.
it greatly.
yes, it did.
Yes. As you know, the beach crossovers are all open. Denrec has been great lately. It's been vastly improved with Greg Patterson as the new secretary, and they have been working great with the town. They got our crossovers open before the busy Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's time, when I'm sure all of you have seen some of the crowds we've had downtown. Thanksgiving morning, I couldn't believe the number of people who were here for that turkey trot. I think we had 2,500 runners that day, and it was incredible how many people were here in town. So, but also, their chief of staff with Denrec was here on Tuesday. I had some nice discussions with him. He offered, what other things do we need on the beach? What other things can we help you with? One of them is we have a handicap crossover that is out of commission right now. I mean, you can walk it, but it's not handicapped down at Wellington. He is more than willing to come in and get that repaired. However, we recommended it not be repaired right now, move it to the March, April timeframe, when we're expect to be out of the, the nor'easter season that we experience here in the winter and, springtime, early spring period. We have a storm moving in on us now that who knows what it's going to do over this weekend with 20 to 30 miles an hour winds coming out of the east. Another positive thing, we had, Bethany had the pleasure of hosting the Sussex County Association of Towns monthly meeting here in November the 5th, where we did have Greg Patterson in town, and he was the featured speaker. Spoke very positively on efforts and how they approach the beach and how they approach trying to help us, the bay beaches as well. But he's only got so many resources, and he can only do as much as he can do. So we appreciate at least the effort, and they really worked with the town in getting the crossovers opened this last time. So that was great. Another thing that I think I heard that discussed a little bit was that Deneric on November the 21st, issued a notice to the coastal and town communities of a new shoreline public access plan requirement. This is a detailed plan that has to be prepared by July the 1st of this year, covering set criteria to demonstrate that your community provides proper public access to all our beaches. I don't think Bethany's going to have much of an issue with that. As you know, we provide 1,100 parking spaces for pay-to-park public parking spaces for access to the beach. We have a trolley system which we run 10 in the morning to 10 in the evening, all during the summer season from 15th of May to the 15th of September. And this year we moved, Terry, 4,500?
45,000.
45,000 people rode that trolley this summer. So that just shows you how much use that gets. So that carries all the people. It runs all the way around town, as most of you know, and picks up our visitors, our residents, mainly from the back areas of town, and brings them right down, drops them off at the beach, wherever they want to go, or to the business district. So, but anyway, we're currently working on that public access requirement. I don't think that's going to be, I think that's a very positive step for Bethany Beach. And the purpose of it is to demonstrate that you have public access, but it's going to be used as a major criteria for who gets beach replenishment. So so right there in that lies the importance of it. So if anybody has any questions, please ask me.
I do have one on the.
I knew you would.
On the beach replenishment, typically and Terry, you might be the one to answer on this one. Aren't they typically on South Bethany and Middlesex and
Yeah,
Bethany?
usually at the same time.
Yeah, as part of the same project?
Yes.
Well, Middlesex doesn't,
Not
they're a
Middlesex,
private
but
community.
it's Bethany and South Bethany.
Right.
And then they do Dewey and Rehoboth together. It's just because mobilization is so expensive that they don't want to just do us and then come back and do South Bethany.
Sure, so where I'm going on this is that.
I know, I'm going to get in trouble.
With South Bethany, which, and I have to say, I don't know what their public access is at this point too, but it's gonna be significantly less than what
Yes,
the
yep.
town does. Could that possibly affect our replenishment efforts here?
I don't think it'll affect Bethany.
You know?
We have not, nobody has mentioned that, but I do think what the mayor's saying is true, is that it will have a lot to do with how often you get replenished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, if South Bethany does not provide access that meets that criteria, it could have an effect on our
I think
share of the pie.
I think that what would happen is they would do more of us together, like Rehoboth, and then come down here and do Bethany and that kind of thing, because, yeah. It's been part of the contract for a very long time, but we have never, public access has never been defined by either the Corps or DENREC, and this is a first attempt at it. So I think some of that stuff is going to have to be worked out and determined. I'm not sure even they have thought that far ahead.
Yeah. But, you know, we certainly demonstrated our need. And,
Yeah.
you know, visits like what happened this last week are very positive. And, you know, one of the things that we express and emphasize is the economic impact of the Delaware's coastal economy. And I would have to say Bethany, Rehoboth are probably the two main drivers. But the importance that that has, not just here, and I'm talking not just right here on the beach, but it's because of the beach, all the development that's going on around us. That economic driver is at least as much as agriculture in the state. So when you look at the state as a whole, the coastal economy is a major driver of the entire state's economy. So, we'll discuss, I guess, the dam a little bit. I'm going to let Terry, well, let me just summarize on the dam. I mean, the dam, DENREC has been, we've been meeting with DENREC regularly, every couple months. They are working diligently with us on it, very positively. We've had the approval of parks, federal parks and state parks, a very important aspect for our proposed dam. And those who don't understand, maybe I should just say what the dam is. Delaware, Bethany for 20 years, I guess, has been working on a feasibility to begin with, but a dam that would be located within the Loop Canal, right out at the Assawoman. It's only a 50-foot, and when you say dam, you think, whoa, you know, Hoover Dam. Well, no, that's not what we're talking here. This is a 3.5-foot mechanical operable flap that would be raised, it would normally be sitting flat on the canal, not impeding traffic, not impeding navigation. You wouldn't even know it's there. When there's a storm coming in that we're aware of, where we know we're going to get back bay intrusion, the dam would be raised. And that would prevent 3.5 feet of water from moving into the town. That seems like a small number. However, 3.5 feet will prevent 90 to 95% of all the back bay flooding that this town experiences. And I'm not talking just Pennsylvania Avenue, I'm talking Gibson, I'm talking all the communities, Lake Bethany, you know that very well, but all the communities north of 26. That's almost a third of the town floods from back bay flooding 30 to 40 days a year. And I know a lot of you know that very well. So, but that's what we've been driving for. But anyway, DENREC has been working very positively with us. I think it is progressing well, and this has happened ever since Greg Patterson became secretary. The previous administration, I hesitate to say how, it did not move well, and we were ignored. So, but things have been changed drastically since this new administration under Governor Myers and the new Secretary of DENREC, Greg Patterson. So it is moving well. Time frame for it, it's at least a year. It's probably between a year and 2 years out. We'll see. Right now, there is documentation that is being dealt with by attorneys because there are certain agreements that were signed between DENREC and the federal government that limited the use of building things, structures within the Assawoman right-of-way, which is 50 feet either side of the Assawoman Canal. And that property used to be federal. It was transferred over to DENREC, a number of years ago. So it's under DENREC right now. However, anything that's in navigable waters comes under the U.S. Corps of Engineers as well. So it's working. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Terry, to give us an update.
I'll just pick up where you left off. After I just checked in with Cliff, and he's told me that we're to the point on the dam where we've progressed to allow our engineers to begin the permitting process. So we'll be meeting with them. I touched base with them this afternoon, and they will be touching base with Cliff, and we'll allow them to start the permitting process on the dam. DENREC, just to repeat what you said, Mayor, DENREC has been very, very helpful. We had a good contact with Carrie Petroni, and she's been helpful in settling and helping to resolve some of the deed restrictions that we have, or the Parks and Rec have for that property. So we're working on it, and I'm very happy to report that we're this far. Yep.
Well, I've been able to sit in some of those meetings, and
Yeah, it's great.
And the attitude has been great.
I absolutely agree. Yep. So I'll talk about the loop head and, or the loop canal bulkhead and living shoreline projects. I have good news on the bulkhead, and let's see, I covered up all my notes. So most of the piles to the western end of the loop canal are in place, and except for about 6. And the only reason that that's occurring is because we need to finish that. We need to access the loop canal in order to take dirt and fill in there and to finish up with the sheeting and whalers. So once that part of the project is complete, then we will finish those 6 piles from the shoreline. Okay? Right, as of, okay.
And this is at the Assawoman Canal end or this end?
It's closer to the Assawoman, the bulkhead, sorry, it's a retaining wall, we're not supposed to say bulkhead.
And it's a sizable one.
It's
It's
yeah,
almost
yeah.
900 feet long, I
Yeah,
believe.
855, I
There you
believe,
go, almost.
I think. So, just to be specific. So of that 855 feet, as of a week ago, 533 linear feet of sheet piles have been installed. 654 linear feet of whalers have been installed. The tide has been a factor. We've been getting a lot of wind from the west, and that is pushing the water out of the inlet and out of the canal. And so that has slowed them down a little bit. They now have 2 teams of people working, and we think we're on track to be finished by mid-February with that portion of the project. Then I just saw, I was looking for some information, and I just saw an email from the contractor wanting to know about planning. So that'll be the next phase. And some of the plantings will have to be moved around a little bit because of the dense plantings there already, but we will utilize all the plants that were in the contract so that it's lush there.
Can you just, what type of plants are going in?
It's all native to the, I have a list, but I cannot remember all of them. I have a list.
Some of them are
They're all-
trees, I
They're
know.
trees, and they're all native to that area. So I think you will be happy with that. And there'll still be some things that we'll want to clean up, once things get established and that kind of thing. But they have been ordered, and that'll begin soon. And like I said, some plants need to be shifted because of the dense vegetation that's out there. They think the wall will be completed by mid-February, and so they've ordered cap boards that our engineers have approved, and we believe the bulk of the construction will be done, so it won't interfere with herring. But the DENREC has said that something like plantings that wouldn't create a disturbance to nest could go on past the March 1st deadline. So the living shoreline, we are working with DENREC, but there was a mix-up, and the permit was submitted to a different division than it needed to be, and they never told us, and so now we're submitting it again. So, but we think that will move along now faster since we're all on the same page. Yep. So what was the other stuff? Pannoni engineers and the sea level rise study, the staff is still reviewing it, and once staff is confident and we'll release it to the council so that it can be reviewed. And then there is a Bethany West drainage study that is being conducted right now. Pannoni is actually doing field work, identifying what's there, and they'll document that, and then they'll draw up a list of recommendations for how to better improve that drainage. And I saw them last night at a meeting, and they assured me that all of it will be GIS'd and put into our GIS system, so it's documented for the future, so that mapping is documented. So they are working on it, and they're working with Public Works to do a lot of that identification and the water division. Yep.
And we got a $50,000,
Yeah, a matching planning grant, yes.
yep.
Yep. So
Always good when you can get a grant.
it's always good, yes.
Yep. So even in this atmosphere, you can get grants.
Well, yes, it is.
Was that a
That
state
is a
grant?
grant. It's a state revolving loan planning grant, and they're a 50-50 match, so,
And you just recently, this is kind of off
it is
off track here, but I know
Yep.
you got a $150,000 grant recently for
for
a
the
playground.
for the playground. So that playground is aging out, and we would like to update it and replace the equipment. We're looking at costs and that kind of thing, and we're going to try to handle that to have minimal impact on our budget, but we're working through that.
Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I just remember that one of the plantings is loblolly pine.
Yes, it is, yeah.
There's
Thank
a
you.
lot of loblolly pines out there,
They're
big ones.
The heron like them.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. Oh, one other thing. Matt, you want to just touch base on the, our flooding, our pamphlets and flooding?
Yeah, we've successfully, Ron and I put out the A-frames. You might have seen them up near the bandstand. And we've had a lot of success, well, we believe success. People have been taking the pamphlets, so hopefully they've been applying it. And of course, we're going to pick them up because of the incoming storm. But it's getting to a point where there's not as many homeowners and traffic through town, so we probably will be pulling them up, for the winter until maybe April?
Yeah.
Yeah, when people start coming back. Not that you don't count.
So, one other thing is this coming week, members, there's 4 of us that are going up to Wilmington on Tuesday, weather permitting, but there is a, DENREC and the state puts on a wetlands conference, which is rather large and draws people from all over the country, but members of the committee will be attending that this week, or next week, this coming week. So we'll have that to report on the next meeting. So thank you very much for coming, and I'm going to call the meeting to adjourn. Thank you very much.